Microsoft hasn't really had a hit on its hands with previous iterations of the Zune, but now Microsoft's Zune HD has garnered a little bit of buzz. Today the company released the product, and now people are getting their hands on it. And I don't know, what's the initial impression of the Zune HD, or what are people looking forward to? We bring in a couple of technology journalists. First off, Clayton Morris from Fox News. Clayton, thanks for being with us.
Hey, thanks, Randall. You're tearing me away from the lost symbol Dan Brown's new novel on my Kindle right now.
That'll show you. Got to be on the show. Also, we bring in Kevin Tofel from JKOnTheRun. Kevin, thanks for being with us.
No problem.
So the Zune HD, obviously not available. You can't get Dan Brown's novel on that thing yet. But highlights of the device: it's an OLED screen. It looks really sharp. The interface is killer. It's running on an NVIDIA Tegra processor, which is essentially a system on a chip. It's an entire computer on one chip. So there's a lot of things under the hood that make this device pretty appealing. I don't know, Clayton, what's your take on the Zune HD?
I'm pretty excited about some of the, there are a couple of pros, and then I have a whole long list of cons, which we don't need to get to. But the pros, I love the idea of being able to stream HD movies right to my television. That's something that Apple can't do with an iPod. You can do that through your Apple TV, streaming from iTunes. The OLED screen, as you mentioned, is beautiful. Hands-on with it. It just really has a really fantastic display. And some of the user interface options, you see that now in iTunes 9. It seems as if Apple was paying attention to what Microsoft was doing here with the Zune experience, making larger icons. I've enjoyed the user interface, but doesn't hold up to my list of cons.
Yeah, well, let's go into some of those. I don't know, really quick before we get to Kevin. What's your top con?
The price tag. I mean, to me, I'm going to drop a bomb here. Everyone's saying this is compete with the iPod Touch. I don't think it competes with the iPod Touch anymore after last week. I think the main player in this market right now, the main competition to this is the iPod Nano, with a cheaper price tag, more functionality, and Microsoft says they're not going to be adding an app store. This experience. There's
a big problem with that. So Microsoft has said previously that the App Store was something that they're going to play close to the vest. Right now, it's a turf war internally at Microsoft. You know that there's going to be drama between the Windows Mobile folks and the Zune folks. So there's lots of problems internally at Microsoft. I don't know. Getting back to the main unit itself, Kevin, what's your take on the device before we even talk more about the App Store?
Sure. Well, Randall, I have not actually held the device yet. I have a review unit on the way. From what I've seen, it looks fantastic. I was an original Zune 30 owner. I actually owned a Zune before I owned an iPod ever, which is rare, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I like the fact that Microsoft is taking advantage of something they should have 2-3 years ago, the Wi-Fi. Before all we could do was squirt music from one Zune to another if you could find one, but now you can actually use a browser. So I think that's fantastic.
Yeah.
They've brought the feature spec list up, but I'm wondering, are these the features that people really want and need? Clayton pointed out a good point. You can take 720p video from the device right to an HD TV, but most people have enough ways to get content on their TV, and broadband is another way to do that. So I'm not sold that these are the features people want.
I think that Microsoft's always had sort of, we're going to come up with interesting features that people might not necessarily use. For example, you bring up squirting, which is the ability for Zunes to trade music for a few days. I think it was 5 days, and you could trade
3 days, 3 plays.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah.
So the ability to transfer that around. The Zune marketplace has always been more social than iTunes, although now with iTunes 9, they're adding some things like Twitter and Facebook to try and get in the game. Clayton, I mean, you mentioned the App Store. Let's get back to that. Obviously, Apple has a gigantic advantage in that they've built the best mobile ecosystem to date, and I think that's pretty much not up for argument. Microsoft, they're going to release a few apps here and there. I think there's a Twitter client on the way, they've said. Most of the apps are going to be developed internally, though. They're not going to be releasing an SDK, which is a huge limitation for developers in that they can't develop for it without hacking it. Is that going to be Microsoft's biggest hurdle here, is that App Store?
I think absolutely. Kids want iPod Touches for the games and for the music. My co-host Dave hands his iPhone off, or he had an iPod Touch before. He just hands it off to his kids, and they are occupied for hours. Teenagers who are loving those devices. But I will say, I'm very excited that the Zune HD comes with a calculator application.
Oh snap! Calculator.
If the Zune accounts for only 2% of the marketplace right now in portable music players, and the iPod accounts for 73% according to NPD Group. So, look, a music device with an FM tuner, shoots video, no app store, cheaper price. I don't know. It just doesn't make any sense to me. If it has to shoot video to even compete with a Nano at this point, I don't know. I don't think it's a compelling device that people are going to be rushing out to get.
The thing I'm most excited about is that interesting interface. I think it's one of those cool devices you can show off to someone, sort of like, look how cool this is. The screen obviously is beautiful, things like that. That's the places where I think it has a leg up on the Nano. But again, I'm not totally sold because, if you're looking for a pure music experience, maybe the HD radio is nice. Maybe, those are kind of the nice things to have with the Zune. But I'm not in the market for a portable media player. I just want it because it looks cool. I don't know, Kevin, what's your... on the cons, obviously, is this anything Microsoft can really overcome?
Well, that's a tough call, and going back, we've said a couple times in this show, the screen is beautiful. I just want to caveat that, not if you're outside. That's something people should be aware of.
That's true. I guess I never have seen it outside. So
yeah. And the other thing, going to your original question, I start to wonder. Only Microsoft knows how much integration they could have between Zune and Windows phones or Windows mobile platform. That's where I think they need some integration and to really compete. With keeping them separate, I don't see this as a winner in the long term.
Well, the real problem... sorry, go ahead, Clayton.
No, I was going to say that's a great point, Kevin. Getting rid of Windows Mobile altogether might be a godsend, and having the Zune experience. Zune in the portable place. And I threw out this poll right before the show, Randall, earlier, to anyone who was planning on buying a Zune HD. I put the poll up on my website. 50% of people said absolutely not. 25% said yes. And 25% said, I've never even heard of a Zune.
Oh, there you go. They still got to overcome the iPod, I guess, there.
Yeah.
So, last hit for me, I'm really excited about the device. I'm glad to see a credible competitor to the iPod Touch, whether it's actually delivers the promise or not. I really think the first iteration of the Zune was not a credible competitor to the iPod just because, we had the iTunes Music Store, which was sort of, you were locked into DRM, and now that's less of an issue. But, even still, I'm not really holding my breath to see this to be a runaway success. Anyway, guys, we're out of time, so we're going to leave it there. Clayton Morris from Fox News, thanks for joining us. He does Fox and Friends on the weekends. Also, Kevin Tofel from JKOnTheRun, it's JKOnTheRun.com. Thanks for being on the show as well.
Thanks.
I'm Randall Bennett. Don't forget, you can catch us on iTunes. We're on YouTube. We're in the Zune Marketplace. I want to see how we look on a Zune HD, so if you've got a video and you want to send it to us, do it. I want to see us. Anyway, see you later.